Good morning. Last fall, November, I had posted 5 videos on fixing the mid-70s Rockola jukeboxes, and although they didn't go viral, there were enough questions, and it looked like there was enough interest to keep pursuing this. So I'm going to post this 6th video on some additional problems that have shown up on the machines that I have purchased since that time that I think will be of value to go over, as they are common themes. And then there'll probably be a 7th video in a couple weeks on the 48350 amplifier and how I approach it. I've learned a good bit in the last 6 months, and I wanted to share some of that information as well. So let's talk about 4 additional problems that have occurred in the last 6 months that I think are important, that I had not encountered up to that time. And so here they go. The first issue is the most common in the Rockolas, and that is the frozen mechanism. It often is seen when you buy a box that's been sitting for a long time. And last fall I had the audacity to say that I never had to hammer out the pins and do the formal cleaning of all the internal components of the gripper, because I had success simply with a heat gun and loosening the gears and torquing it gently with a screwdriver, etc. However, I did meet a mechanism here that even after the heat gun, yes, it did free it up, but as soon as it cooled down again, it froze again. So I was about to take it apart and hammer away, and I talked to my brother, and he said, well, there's one more trick. And that trick is a $3.90 can of gum out. It's a carburetor choke cleaner that Walmart has. And guess what? You can go and you can spray right in this hole right there on the side, and the stuff will come out here on the pinion or the gripper innards. And lo and behold, this cleaned everything to the point where I no longer had to consider banging out the pins. It should be another tool for you to try before you disassemble the gripper, because that's not an easy job, and we're all trying to do this efficiently. At any rate, note again that I had taken out, to work on this, you must, of course, remove or at least loosen the gripper motor. The 2 screws or bolts are on the underside. Loosen it and at least disengage it from the gear, or take it off since you're going to be working on it anyway. But again, you know that you have a clean gripper when you can visualize it to grab the record first before it lifts up. If it lifts up first before it grabs the record, you haven't cleaned it well enough. And then, of course, when it comes out and lays down the record, I never mentioned the popularity meter, but look what happens there. The popularity meter goes in and presses the record out. That's something you want to clean. It's not very important, but if it's there, you want to at least know that what's happening at certain parts of the cycle. Again, the record must, when it lays down, it must release the record, and then when it's coming back, it must grab the record first before it lifts. And that's important. If it does that, you know you've done a good job as far as cleaning. Another thing, when you have the gripper bow straight up, there are some little ports here. You can put oil down on both sides, and you can also lift it up and down. Just work everything in, and you should be successful. I just wanted to add this. I'm not going to belabor it anymore. I will show you on the back the Microswitch assembly and how they move as well. Here in the home position, the number 1 Microswitch is in the divot, and the number 3 is out of the divot. The number 2 and 2A will go into their divot as it comes around and lays the record down. So here's the sequence you want to see in the back, and all these connectors should be taken off and cleaned. They're all important. The only one that isn't important is this, the one that is, there's a capacitor across the counter here. That you can let that go. That's not very important, and I wouldn't worry about that. But all the other contacts should be taken off and cleaned for good reliability. So here it goes. We're going to bring the record out now. Notice that the number 1 came out, number 2A and 2B will operate now. See, they're going, and then there's number 3 went down in the divot. That's when the record is on the table. This is how it must occur for reliability. If it doesn't, you're going to have some issues. I also last fall in one of the videos mentioned that the control box underneath the mechanism seldom caused trouble, and I didn't really do much with it. But sure enough, we had a problem with the record not rejecting at the end of cycle in one of the machines. Usually that's going to be the tone arm switch or the cancel switch on the back of the machine. That's what actuates the record cancellation, but it has to go through this reverse relay, which is in the control box. And sure enough, there was a dirty contact there, and that resolved the problem. Notice that there's an interlock and a trip relay in there as well. And if you look closely in the rest position or home position, the interlock lever should be on top, and this one should be under. I hope you can see it. Now, when this one pulls in, it goes the other way, but you want it to be the other way here. You want it to have this one on top. Just be sure it's clean those contacts as well. Yes, it could have been the diode, and it could have been the resistor over here. You want to check that 680 ohm resistor, but I just wanted to familiarize yourself with the control boxes, as certainly those components are key as well. Okay, next. I was actually lucky that this problem had not surfaced in the first 10 boxes I had fixed up, but sure enough, intermittent failure of the cancel arm is not a rare problem. And there are a lot of causes of that. We talked about a bad AB switch. We talked about a faulty Microswitch 2A, dirty circuit board. But one of the more common causes that I hadn't picked up on is a worn down cancel pawl on the readout cancel assembly, which goes on the right side of the box here. You can take this whole assembly off. Of course, you clean the contacts, but I hadn't even looked at this pawl, and a lot of these are worn down, and you can envision that when it goes to cancel, it's going to miss the pin because it's worn off. So what do? Well, you got to replace that, and there's two possibilities. You can scavenge one off the read-in assembly because it's the same part number, and for some reason the read-in assembly didn't seem to wear down as much, and they were maintained, but they're the same part number. It's 48952 on these box. Or you can go to an earlier machine. Now the 450 and earlier, they've got metal cancel pins on both the read-in and read-out. So if you get one of these, well, you'll never have to replace it again. Also, on the readout assembly, make sure that these little divots that hit the selected pin are free to move, and go on the other side, and also clean the spring steel connection that keeps them in place. I had neglected to mention that contact, but it's also important to clean that. Okay, well, this should fix your problem with intermittent cancellation failures. Last problem I want to discuss is a problem that when the right-in arm goes for the selection, it finds the selection, it hammers the pin, the wobble plate solenoid kicks in, but the play control relay does not start. And you have to look carefully to see why. Very often, this little protrusion of this spring steel is broken off, and that's necessary so that the wobble plate switch gets activated when the solenoid kicks in. You can see that. If that little appendage is not there, the wobble plate switch is not going to always be actuated and the play control relay won't start. This is a common problem. Always look at this piece of steel on the wobble plate switch to be sure it's intact so that it will activate the switch when the solenoid contracts. Okay, that's enough for the problems. This will conclude this video. I'd like to remind you in a couple weeks we will be doing one on the amplifier. Thanks a lot.